We've heard a lot about momentum. We know a lot about momentum. But I want to take a second and have you think that maybe, just maybe, there's such a thing as negative momentum. See, where positive momentum exists is in this high energy, supersonic propulsion forward, this moving to something great, this change, this energy. Where negative momentum exists, leaves you feeling stuck, stagnant, as if life is just passing you by and you're stuck in your tracks. You may feel mediocre, mundane, that you're not worth a whole lot, you can't do a whole lot, and not a whole lot of good is coming your way. I would venture to guess that most of you know negative momentum more than you know positive momentum. At least I do. I spent the better part of my adult life trying desperately to get a win, to know momentum, to chase after all the right things, to have the right careers and the right relationships and volunteer in the right spaces, have the right dollars in my bank account, live in the right neighborhoods. But when those things didn't create the momentum I was looking for, it kind of dinged my self-esteem a little bit. It sort of discounted my self-worth. It started to make me feel like I wasn't good enough. I didn't have what it would take for success in life. And I was waiting for something to happen. See, the problem with momentum is we're waiting for something to happen on the outside of us. A win, a success, a promotion, a proposal, an uptick in our finances. Maybe it's the last couple of pounds we need to lose before we feel like we can hit the beach. See, we're waiting for it to happen. And when you wait and it doesn't happen, that's when the negative momentum slides in. That's where I was at. And I would try to change everything in my life to get that sense of win and success. I changed my hair, my clothes, the people I hung around with, the things I did, the places I went. I even went as far as to change the mattress on my bed, hand to Jesus. I slept better, but I didn't have any more momentum. But I wanted to have a sense of winning. And see, what happened is that all of those feelings, those negative feelings brought on by negative momentum, began to manifest themselves into negative decisions. Anybody? Mistakes and failures weren't just sticking points for me. They became life-altering changes that threw me into a pit that said, no, you get to stay there. And the culmination of all of my mistakes and failures and desperate moves and the desperation I had to claw my way out of this pit that I felt like I was stuck in, only to be knocked back down in, led me to bad choices, bad mistakes, failures. And I was suffocated by the weight of those until I had a revolutionary thought. One thought that would forever change my life. It was so transformative that in that moment, it spun everything that I knew about life differently. It shaded it a different color, and it upended what I knew for me, and then began to change the trajectory that my life was on. But here's the funny thing. I didn't have that pivotal moment sitting in a boardroom. I wasn't in a corner office on a corporate high-rise. I wasn't sitting in a college classroom having a mastermind discussion with anybody. It was quite opposite. I had this revolutionary thought, this changing moment in my life, serving time in prison. My name's Christie Browning, and I'm a convicted felon. Ooh, that's hard to say even now. See, my choices took me to the breaking point. And it was on a Sunday night of a Memorial Day weekend, a hot, humid Memorial Day weekend in Indiana, that I stood inside a gymnasium at the Indiana Women's Prison. I was there with about 300 other female offenders, and a local church had come to host a faith-based event that weekend. And quite frankly, I did not want to be there. But they promised food. A girl's got to eat. I was there. And while all of these offenders were having these sort of moments with these church people, these well-meaning church people, I kind of was off by myself, and I had this thought that, Christie, all of this time, you have been waiting for momentum to happen to you. But what if momentum should be happening through you, from the inside out? And I stood in that gymnasium and vowed that the rest of my time in prison, I was going to change, and I was not leaving that prison the same girl that walked in. Heck, I wasn't even leaving the gymnasium the same person as I was when I walked in. And life began to change for me. And I began to walk around prison thinking, okay, how can momentum happen through me? And 4 very simple but very profound things came to mind that I started implementing right away. And here's the beauty of it. You can implement them right away too. It doesn't require anything special, but it will change you. See, it's hard to be a felon when you are on the outside away from other felons. Prison isn't a lot like what you see on TV. It's not like the latest Netflix documentary, at least my experience wasn't. It's kind of a soul-sucking, hopeless experience that you are just passing time. In fact, when we talk about prison and we talk about, serving time, we'd say we're doing time, right? And that just feels that time passing by, ticking by, the world's forgotten about you. There's not a whole lot of hope for you. But when you start thinking that, you know what? It starts in me, you don't need permission anymore. It doesn't matter where you're at, your circumstances, your position, your power, nothing matters anymore. You don't need someone else to pick you up and put you in the game of life, because sister, brother, you now hold the playbook, and it starts from within. In prison, I started becoming a voracious learner. I began to feast on material that would develop my mind. So in prison, you can do a lot of good stuff. You can do some bad stuff too, but you can do some good stuff too. And on the good stuff, you get to do some activities, and one of those being you get to go to the prison library once a week. Now, going to the prison library meant that you got to leave your dorm and walk across the prison yard and go to the library and check out books, much like what you do in your normal library. You just get greeted not by a lovely librarian, but by a guard with a gun, but sort of the same thing. And I would check out books that were all about personal development and bettering my mind and increasing positive thinking, that were inspiring and motivational. And while all of my other female offenders were devouring the latest Twilight novel, I was devouring The Power of Positive Thinking, Think and Grow Rich, Power of Focus. And I didn't just read these books, I would devour them, as in I would write passages out on notebook paper, because I knew those books weren't going to come home with me. And I didn't want to lose those passages that would just mean so much. So I would write them out on notebook paper, and I would write my notes and my commentary and the revelations I would have about those passages on notebook paper. And I became a voracious learner. When I finished that section of the library, I moved over to reading inspiring autobiographies and biographies, world changers, contemporaries who had revolutionary thoughts that overcame things that changed their world. I read good stuff and became a voracious learner. Never have we been in a position more than to devour good stuff. There literally is an app for that. You can download a YouTube video. You can listen to podcasts. You can watch videos. You can go rent books. You can do all of these great things. And you can be a voracious learner. We have never been in a position to where we need to not know something. We've got it at our fingertips. You feel like you don't have momentum in your finances? There's a million books on being a good money manager. You need more momentum in your marriage or in your relationships? Go get a book on communication. Listen to a podcast on parenting. It's all right there for you. It can change you. Second thing I did is I kept a detailed journal while I was in prison. And I did it because I needed to catalog the wins in my life at that moment. I've always been a journaler. I kept a journal since I was about 12 or 13 years old. Of course, at 12 and 13, my journal entries are, Dear Diary, there's a cute boy. And as I matured, my journal entries matured too. And in prison, it was real mature. It was real in the journal. But I needed to remember that even in that hopeless, soul-sucking, life-dissolving space, there were wins still. And I would make myself write 3 wins and 3 anticipations. 3 wins, 3 things that happened good that day that I could be thankful for, feel blessed about. And then 3 things I was looking forward to the next day, and those were challenging. Sometimes the wins were something as trivial as, I got an extra scoop of gravy on my ice-cold instant mashed potatoes at lunch today. Praise Jesus, you know? Sometimes the wins were a little deeper, like, it was my birthday today, and I got cards in the mail from my family who didn't forget about me. Or I got pictures of my new nephew that was been born since I've been locked up. Wins, they became so important, and they're still so important today. Because while I thought prison was going to be the hardest time of my life, it was only a prepping point for hard days to come. And that single idea of journaling wins and anticipating wins changed my life and carried me through really hard times. The third thing I did is I took care of my physical body. Now, this is really challenging in prison because you don't have a lot of choices. There's no 24-hour gym that you can just swipe your little code key and get in. You know, you're kind of stuck doing whatever they give you. But the one thing you could do is you could go outside for rec. And rec in prison consisted of visiting the prison yard. Now, the prison yard was a grassy common area. It had some picnic tables and a walking trail that went around the perimeter. So it was kind of like a park with guards and barbed wire and dogs and, you know, but the prison park. You could go to the park and walk around in the park. And so I would go out to the park every day, and while other offenders would kind of lounge around on the picnic tables or stroll around, I was power walking, man. I was booking it around the yard, and I would get my little prison radio that only got like 2 stations, and on this side of the yard I could listen to this station, and on this side of the yard I had to flip it to this station. We're not high-tech in prison, but it worked. And I would move my body because I needed to put motion to my emotion. Something about that movement flushed the cobwebs, flushed out what was in my heart, gave me room to move, to breathe, to be quiet with my own thoughts, get some endorphins going. We all know the benefits of exercise, and I know what you're all thinking. Well, you must have stopped that because look at the girl now. Listen, some women, they go for an hourglass figure. Christie's okay with her hour 45, all right? Girl like to eat. But what happened was exercise wasn't about fitting into a size or looking a certain way or getting ready for swimsuit season, because there ain't none in prison. But, you know, it wasn't about that. It was about fueling the body for the challenge ahead. And see, when you start realizing that you're gifted with a machine, with legs to carry you for the race and a heart to pump you full of passion, then taking care of your body takes on a whole new meaning, and it becomes full of purpose. Which takes me to the fourth thing, and it's probably the most important thing I did and still do today, is I identified what my purpose was, and then I knew how to insert that into my everyday life. See, I found out by reading all of those books and journaling all of those thoughts and hoofing it around the prison park that I had a gift for encouragement and inspiration. I was the first person to walk up to a group of women and give them a compliment, because in prison you don't really want to give a whole lot more than that. You want to give a compliment, win some friends. But that was my gift. I could walk up and cheer somebody on and push them through a tough time and offer a compliment, offer support, and that was my gifting, was natural for me. And I thought, Christie, what if you could put this into the little mundane activities that you do every day? To the point that all of a sudden it wasn't just about making me feel good, because it did. It made me feel great. It made me feel purposeful, like I had a reason to be there. But I started to see the change in other people because of what I was doing. What happened in me bubbled up and out and started to influence my cellmate. It started to have an impact on the other women in my dorm. It started impacting the guards. To the point when I checked out of prison, the guards stood at the door and cried, because it didn't want me to leave. Christie, you've changed this place. And it wasn't anything magical that I was or that I did. It was just that I took an intentional effort to put into the world what I was here to give. And so you may have the gift of hospitality. You make people feel welcome, loved, nurtured, wanted, accepted. The world needs that from you in your everyday life. Maybe you have the gift of listening. In our fast-paced, digital-driven world, we need listeners in our everyday. You may have the gift of support, nurturing. We need that in our everyday. How can you insert that into the tasks that you do every day? Those 4 things became pivotal for me, not in prison, outside of prison as well. And what I learned with those 4 things is that they were true standards for when the road got rocky and twisted and I wanted to slide so much farther back into negative momentum again. Those 4 things I could pull out and I could ride that wave and feel momentum through me again. See, people want to always remind you of where you come from, especially if where you come from is a little dark and a little wrong and a little twisted. And they want to take you there, and they want to remind you why you can't be something else, go somewhere else, do something else. And it can be real easy to believe those lies. But each of you today have a reason to be here, have a purpose. It may be buried. It may be under a lot of mistakes or failures or fear. You may feel suffocated by that sitting here right now, thinking, I don't know how to pull that out. Me and negative momentum, we're best friends, and I want so bad for that to change. This is how it starts, with a decision, an intentional decision to make a change from the inside out, and you can have the change. And it won't just stop with you. See, if we want to make a difference in our communities, if we want to see mamas and papas feel better and stronger and more empowered to be who they are and do what they do with their families, we want to see our coworkers thrive, not just survive. We want to see an economic revolution in what we do and who we are. Believe it or not, as crazy as it sounds, it does start with you. And it does start with that 4-part system. Being a good learner, journaling your thoughts so you know the wins that you've got. Taking care of you because we need you, and knowing your purpose because we need that too. You can make a difference. It can make a change. You can be the transformative thought that changes for you, for your family, for your coworkers, for your community. I know it because I lived it. I know it because I lived it even today, even here in this building. And I know that for each one of you here, you're looking for momentum, or you wouldn't be here. You want success, you want the win, you want to be a significant impact in the world around you, and it can start here. No longer do you have to wait for momentum to happen to you. You now have the secret for how momentum can happen through you. Thank you.